Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to today's Friday Reflections on this Thursday, the 28th of August 2022. I can't do it tomorrow, which of course is Friday, so this is why I'm doing it this evening. I hope everybody is well wherever you're tuning into this from. And today I would like to continue reading from this book, the Book of Knowledge, which is part of Ihya Ulum by Imam Al-Ghazali, a great scholar to whom should need no introduction to Muslims and even many academics who are familiar with Islamic scholarship. I'm going to continue reading from page 17. Evidence for the excellence of knowledge from reason. The purpose of this section is to comprehend the excellence and value of knowledge. Nevertheless, unless excellence is in itself understood and its meaning determined, it will not be possible to acknowledge it as an attribute to knowledge or to any other trait besides. Similarly, whoever expects to determine whether or not Zayd is wise without having understood the meaning and essence of wisdom is sure to go astray. Interesting point here. Imam Al-Ghazali is defining his terms. Now, this is something today that whenever you write a paper or you have a debate, you should define what you mean by your terms, especially important terms that can be understood in different ways, depending upon how you approach them. So Imam Al-Ghazali starts by defining excellence. Excellence is derived from the infinitive to excel, which is excruciance. When, therefore, of two objects which are similar, one has an extra characteristic, that object is described as excelling the other, no matter what its excellence may be. Thus, saying that the horse is more excellent than the donkey means that the horse shares with the donkey the capacity for carrying burdens, but excels it in charging, wheeling, swiftness, and beauty. However, should a donkey possess a ganglionary growth, it would not be described as more excellent, because the ganglion, although an excrescence on the body, is in reality a defect, an imperfection. In addition, the animal is sought for its useful qualities, not for its physical features. If then you understand this, it will be clear to you that knowledge excels when compared with the other attributes, just as a horse is distinguished when compared with other animals. So you see, the horse has certain qualities over the donkey, which are appreciated. Both of them you could use as a pack animal. You could even ride both of them, but the donkey will only ride fairly slowish. It's not going to go fast. It's not going to be nice to ride in the same way that a horse would. So this is why, because the horse contains certain utilitarian attributes which are appreciated, then the horse is described as being more excellent than a donkey. Now, if the donkey has, I don't know, bigger ears, or as he said, a ganglionic growth, something which is a defect or regarded as a defect by people, then just because it's extra doesn't mean that that's going to be appreciated. It has to be something which is extra, which is appreciated, extra, which benefits. And Imam Al-Ghazali is using this as an example to compare with knowledge. Knowledge, however, is in itself an absolute excellence apart from any attribution. It is the description of God's perfection, and through it the angels and prophets were imbued with honor. The fleet horse is better than the fleet horse is better than the slow. Knowledge is therefore an excellence in the absolute and apart from any attribution. Imam Ghazali continues and says, a precious and desired object may be of one of three categories: what is sought as a means to an end, what is sought as for its own end, for its intrinsic value, and what is sought for both. What is sought for its own intrinsic value is nobler and more excellent than that which is sought as a means to an end. The dirham and the dinar are objects sought as means to an end to secure other objects. In themselves, they are only two useless metals, and had not God made it possible to transact business through them, they would have been the same as pebbles, and the same is true of money today. You know, some people, they focus on money, and of course money is important, but money is a means to an end. The end itself is more excellent, or something which you seek just because it has its own value. Money's value is in what you use it for, what you use it to gain. That's not to say it's not important, or it shouldn't be sought, but, and this is what Imam Ghazali is discussing here with the dirham and the dinar, which is old forms of money. Happiness and hereafter, and the ecstasy of viewing the face of God are sought for their own intrinsic value, while physical health is sought both for its own intrinsic value and as a means to an end. So, you know, physical health, if you don't have that, you can't do anything. So it is a means to an end, but also physical health is something which you seek purely because you want to be healthy. It feels good to be healthy. It doesn't feel good to be unhealthy or sick. Man's health, for example, is sought because it is a guarantee against bodily pain, and also because it helps man to reach his ends and to secure his needs. Similarly, if you would consider the case of knowledge, you would discover that it is in itself delightful and therefore sought for its own intrinsic value. And you would also find it's a way which leads to the hereafter and happiness, and the means whereby we come close to God. And of course, you could add knowledge also helps us to secure many goals within life, especially today in this information age. If you lack knowledge, if you lack understanding of the world, of science, of the way things work, you're not going to get very far in life. But to understand these things is delightful in itself. So knowledge is both an ends in itself and also a means to an end. The greatest achievement, in the opinion of man, is eternal happiness. And the most excellent thing is the way which leads to it. This happiness will never be attained except through knowledge and works. And works are impossible without the knowledge of how they're done, which is the point I just made. The basis for happiness in this world and the next is knowledge. Of all works, it is, therefore, the most excellent. So of all the things you can do, of all the things which you can invest in, knowledge, education is the most excellent, because it will help you both in this life, in very practical ways, in your business, in looking after your family, in community relations, in networking, and it will help you in the next life. And it will help you to get to the next life. It will help you to attain closeness to God, depending on which fields of knowledge you investigate. But knowledge as an overall umbrella, it helps us with all of these things. And even knowledge of dunya can also help us with akhirah. Knowledge of this world can help us also attain paradise. It can help us with our religion, because we need to have all-round knowledge. We have to understand how things work. That's important. Otherwise, how do we counter negative things within society and things which come against us or come against our religion and our practice of religion? How can we, for instance, determine what is halal and haram for us if we do not understand it? Even with food, you buy food now and you look at processed foods and how many ingredients are in them. And what are those ingredients? How can you deduce what is halal and haram if it doesn't have a halal stamp on it? A lot of things which don't have a halal stamp on them are halal, but some of them aren't. And if you don't know what the ingredients are, you can't determine that. And we shouldn't be relying on a stamp on our food in order to know whether it's halal or not. And we don't even know if sometimes these stamps are true. Because that's just what someone else decrees. And this is just talking about the, halal and haram. I mean, there's all sorts of things in life which we have to assess, we have to weigh up. We have to come to some kind of understanding between what our faith encourages us and commands us to do, and what are the things we have to navigate in this life, in the societies in which we live. There's a lot of harmonizing and compromise that we have to do in order to achieve what is a good balance in life, a way which is blessed. And knowledge is the biggest thing that can help you with that. The basis for happiness in this world and the next is knowledge. Of all works, it is therefore the most excellent. And why not? Since the excellence of anything is revealed by the quality of its fruit. You have already learned that the fruit of knowledge in the hereafter is drawing near to the Lord of the universe, attaining the rank of the angels, and joining the company of the heavenly hosts. Its fruits in the world, however, are power, dignity, influence over kings, and reverence from all, to an extent that even the ignorant Turks and the rude Arabs are found naturally disposed to honor their teachers, because the latter are distinguished by a great deal of knowledge derived from experience. Even the animal does by nature honor man, because it senses he is distinguished by a degree of perfection exceeding its own. Salam alaikum. As shall be seen later, the different branches of knowledge vary, and with their variation, their excellencies vary. The excellencies of teaching and learning, in view of what we have already said, are therefore manifest. For if knowledge is the most excellent of things, the process of acquiring it would then be a search for the most excellent, and imparting it would be the promoting of the most excellent. And think about this today. With a lot of our ulama, are we promoting the most excellent people? People who have an in-depth knowledge, and not only just about fiqh. Because it's important, Today we live in a world that I mean, like, look at me now. I'm talking to you through Zoom and Instagram and Facebook, through computers. This is all due to scientific and technological developments. That is the fruit of knowledge. But how many of you understand how this works? And I don't mean, you know, the obvious, you know, you click it and it works, or you just start live. You know, I don't mean that. I mean the underpinnings of it, how it really works. How many of you understand that? Or even have a rough understanding? You see, the people who designed these systems, they understand what they were doing, or at least I hope they do. Otherwise, these systems wouldn't even exist. They wouldn't work. But how many of you watching this understand? How many of you who use the apps on your phone understand how your phone works, how the operating system on your phone works, or how any of those apps work? How many of you can design them? How many things in life are like this? How many of you understand how your refrigerator works, or your freezer? How many of you understand how a washing machine works, or your car, or all manner of things? How many of you understand how the financial system works? How many of you understand how your government is working behind the scenes, the systems that are in place? To have at least, I'm not saying we have to be experts in all of these things, but to have some understanding of the systems that we're utilizing every day or affect us in our day-to-day lives, it's very worthwhile and it's important. If you have understanding and something goes wrong, you can engage with these systems. You can try to put something right. If you don't understand how it works, then you are forever beholden to these systems and you have no say in it. You become controlled, ultimately. And you become dependent upon things you do not understand. Not suggesting for a moment that I understand any of these things perfectly either. But I do read, and I have some insights into many different fields. For if knowledge is the most excellent of things, the process of acquiring it would then be a search for the most excellent, and imparting it would be the promoting the most excellent. For human interests extend to both the material and the spiritual worlds, and no order exists in the latter without existing in the former, because this world is a preparation for the next, and is the instrument which leads to God, anyone who uses it as such, a home for him who takes it as a dwelling place. The affairs of this world, however, do not become orderly except through human activities. These activities, crafts and industries, are described in 3 categories. So you see, this world is a preparation for the next. So there must be something that we learn in this world, the things that we can learn here, which give us insights about the next, even though the next is different. Otherwise, why would this preparation here, this is what Imam Al-Ghazali is saying, it wouldn't make sense. And some people, they treat this world as a home. And he said that the affairs of this world do not become orderly except through human activities. And of course, I mean, if you study nature, you'll find there's a lot more order in nature than many people realize, a lot more organization. But nonetheless, order as we understand it, it's like if you look at a lot of bushland, It's just bushland. It's rough. It's not very useful to us in that form. It becomes organized when some of the trees get chopped down, when the fields get plowed, when we plant the crops that we want, when we plant hedgerows between the fields, or put fences. Hedgerows are better, they're better for wildlife, but either way, it become organized when we farm or when we garden. It's like with anything in this world. This is where we define the difference between wild and civilized. And that too is a definition, it's a difference that is rooted in knowledge, the development of knowledge and the implementation of knowledge to create society, to create civilization, so that we're no longer just wild animals. The first involves 4 fundamental activities without which chaos would rule the world. Agriculture for raising foodstuffs, weaving for manufacturing cloths, architecture for erecting houses, and politics for establishing human relationships, and society and for promoting cooperation in the control of the means of living. The second involve such activities as are auxiliary to any of the above mentioned fundamental activities. Thus, ironcraft is auxiliary to agriculture as well as several other industries. It supplies them with their respective tools and instruments, such as the implements for carding and spinning cotton preparatory to its weaving. Third involves such activities as are supplementary to the previously mentioned principal industries, e.g. the process of milling and bread making in relation to agriculture and the process of laundering and tailoring to weaving. We see there's different levels of industry. Even I learned this in business studies many years ago at primary industries and secondary industries. And how some industries are just about securing resources, basic resources like wood or grain or iron ore or something. And then you've got the next level, it's the manufacturing industries, which actually turn that wood into tables or into chairs or into paper, or the grain it gets milled and turned into bread and such like. The relation of these principal activities to the order of things in this world is as the relation to the members of the body to the whole, because the members of the body are also divided into 3 categories. These are fundamental, like the heart, the liver, and the brain; auxiliary, like the stomach, veins, arteries, and sinews; or supplementary and ornamental, like nails, fingers, and eyebrows. The highest of these activities are the fundamental, and of these, the highest is politics, as employed in unifying people and in reform. For that reason, this discipline demands of those who pursue it a degree of perfection greater than that required by any of the other disciplines, and in consequence, it is inevitable that the politician should subordinate to himself and make use of the other professionals. And of course, Imam Al-Ghazali is talking about political ideals here, how politics should be used for the benefit of bringing people together, organizing society, and for the benefit of the citizens. Of course, it doesn't always work that way. Al-Ghazali continues, politics bent on reform and on guiding people to the straight path, which ensures salvation in this world and the next, is in turn divided into 4 classes. The first, which is also the highest, is the religious polity of the prophets, which includes their jurisdiction over the thoughts and actions of the privileged few and the common folk alike. The second is the civil polity of the caliphs, the kings, and sultans, which involves their jurisdiction over their actions, but not their thoughts, of the privileged few and the common folk. The third is the intellectual polity of the learned man, who know God and his will, and who are the heirs of the prophets, which involves jurisdiction only over the thoughts of the privileged few, since the understanding of the common folk is too low for them to benefit, and their power of discrimination is too weak to observe and emulate their actions, and are therefore subject to no compulsion or restraint. The fourth is the ecclesiastical polity of the preachers, which involves jurisdiction only over the thoughts of the common folk. So you see, the kind of politics that Imam Al-Ghazali is discussing here is when you have kings or politicians or leaders who are advised by educated and pious people. And of course, today, sadly, a lot of ulama are not as educated as they should be, and probably not as pious as they should be in some cases. And pious in the sense of God conscious, not necessarily like what kind of actions that they do, which they may or might not do, but actually being God conscious. I mean, what's the point? You do all these religious activities, but if you're not really God conscious, you know, it's what are you doing? You could do less and be more God conscious, and that would actually be better. But this is not what many of these people teach. And so Imam Al-Ghazali is giving an idea of, in his perspective, of how the first group of the political people should make themselves are the highest, and they should make themselves the highest is the religious polity of the prophets, which involves their jurisdiction over the thoughts and actions of the privileged few and the common folk alike. So I mean, this is people, they're not with us today, but we should have their teachings, and their teachings should be elevated. The second is the civil polity of the caliphs, the kings and the sultans, so the people who are actually in that head of state and the ruling society, and their jurisdiction over the actions but not the thoughts of the privileged few and the common folk. So the thoughts of the people, not the thoughts of the people, but the actions of the people, but not the thoughts, which fortunately today is a direction that many things seem to be going in. The third is the intellectual polity of the learned men who know God. So this is ulama, the academics in the modern world, people who are very scholarly, knowledgeable. And they should serve as advisors. And the fourth, is the ecclesiastical polity of the preachers, which just like the common imams, which are, you know, over the common folk. And of course, this is the problem today. I think some of these people that are just really simple imams that would be okay being an imam, or even if they were a Christian, a priest in a village or something, but then being elevated to a position which they cannot carry because it requires a much deeper degree of knowledge and understanding, not only of what they've been taught in religion, but also over other sciences, which are really important for being able to provide good advice to a society as a whole, and especially to, you know, people that have power and influence. And Imam Al-Ghazali continued and says, next to the religious polity of the prophets, the highest is therefore the intellectual, because of its service in disseminating knowledge, in diverting the souls of men from the destructive and undesirable traits, and in guiding them to those which lead to happiness and are praiseworthy, all of which, in the final analysis, fall within the purpose of teaching. We have only said that the intellectual activities are more excellent than the other professions and activities because of the superiority of an activity is known by three things. 1. By examining the native endowments of man through which activity is realized, as in the case of the superiority of the theoretical sciences over the linguistic. Wisdom is attained through the intellect, while knowledge through the sense of hearing. And intellect is superior to the mere sense of hearing. 2. By examining the extent of its usefulness, as in the case of the superiority of agriculture over goldsmith's craft. Yeah. By observing, and 3, by observing the object of its operations, as in the case of the superiority of the goldsmith's craft over tanning. The object of the one is gold, while that of the other is the hide of a corpse. It is further apparent that the religious sciences, which are the knowledge of the path to the hereafter, are comprehended through the maturity of the intellect. A very important point there. It's further apparent that the religious sciences, and this is what the ulama generally refer to, which are the knowledge of the path to the hereafter, are comprehended through the maturity of the intellect. Maturity of the intellect. And as we shall see later, clear understanding and clear intellect are the highest attributes of man, because through the intellect, the responsibility of God's truth, of God's trust is accepted. Through the intellect, the responsibility of God's trust is accepted. And through it, man can enjoy the neighborhood of God. Concerning the extent of its usefulness, there is not the slightest doubt, since it contributes to happiness in the hereafter. And finally, how could the merit of an object of an activity be denied when the objects with which the teacher deals are the hearts and souls of human beings? The noblest being on earth is the Homo sapiens, and the noblest in his essence is his heart, with whose perfecting, cleansing, purifying, and leading to God the teacher is occupied. Thus, on the one hand, the work of the teacher is a form of praise to God, and on the other hand, a form of stewardship. It is in fact the highest form of stewardship, because God has bestowed it upon the heart of the learned men knowledge, which is his most intimate attribute. It is in fact the highest form of stewardship, because God has bestowed upon the heart of the learned man knowledge. So God has given to the learned person knowledge in his heart. And Imam Al-Ghazali is saying this is God's most intimate attribute. Knowledge in the heart. Hence, the learned man is like the keeper of God's most valuable treasures and has permission to give from them to all who need. What rank, therefore, is higher than that in which the servant is an intermediary between his Lord and his fellow men, to draw them closer to God and to lead them to paradise, to which the pious repair? May we, through the grace of God, become one of them. And may he bless every chosen servant. Amen. Hope you found that interesting. Again, the book I've been reading, the Book of Knowledge, which is part of Ihya Ulum of Imam Al-Ghazali. The copy I'm reading here was translated by Nabih Amin Faris, and it was printed in 1988 by Shah offset printer in Delhi. International Islamic Publishers. But yeah, I mean, really very good book to read. And the whole of the Ihya Ulumuddin, I mean, really, there's a reason why Imam Al-Ghazali is referred to as the proof of Islam. And we should read books like this. Someone commented the other day, a lot of us don't even read the Quran, let alone books like this. Well, firstly, we should be reading the Quran and reading it in translation as well as recitation so we can understand what we're reading, because the Quran is a book that is meant to be read and it's meant to be understood. Otherwise, any message, if you don't understand it, what's the point of the message? It's meant to be understood. But books like this that were written by renowned scholars of Islam, they help us come to an even better and deeper understanding of our religion. And so it is important that if we have the ability, which a lot of us are educated today to a level to which we can read these books, we should try to read them, even if we only read one occasionally, but at least something. And today, a lot of these books have been translated into numerous languages, and not only English. And many are now translated into English, which didn't used to be the case. So on this one, like I said, 1988, this has been in English since 1988, and there are probably other translations. Well, I know there are other translations of some of the books contained within the Ihya, because I have more recent translations. But yeah, it's try to read. It is a duty upon every Muslim to seek knowledge. And Allah tells us in the Holy Quran, the first revelation He gave to the Prophet Muhammad is Iqra. And followed by, read in the name of your Lord, who taught through the use of the pen and taught human beings that which they didn't know. Read. Please, you know, today everybody staring at their phones. Read. Even staring at your phone, you can read. Though I prefer traditional books, but make use of your time well, because none of us know how long we've got on this earth. So make the most of the time which you have. If you benefited from this, I would first of all like to give thanks to Imam Al-Ghazali for writing this book, and obviously to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, my sheikhs and my parents. And if there are any mistakes, then please forgive me, any mistakes on my own. I wish you all a very good evening. May Allah bless you all, wherever you are in the world. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings of God be with you.